Welcome back to The roads we travel are more than just asphalt and paint. They are silent witnesses to countless journeys. They hold the echoes of joy, sorrow, and fear. Tonight, we share the story of a young man named Leo, who, on a lonely, rain-swept night, learned that some roads don't just lead to a destination. They lead to a destiny. And sometimes they send a passenger to make sure you arrive on time. The drive was a necessary escape. Leo was leaving behind the ghost of a life that had run its course, heading toward the fragile promise of a new beginning 6 hours away. P's car was a small, warm sanctuary against the relentless autumn rain that turned the world outside into a black, watery blur. P was navigating a desolate stretch of state highway, a place where the darkness felt absolute, and the hypnotic sweep of the windshield wipers was the only thing keeping the oppressive silence at bay. It was in this profound isolation that he first saw the figure on the side of the road. It was a man standing unnaturally still against the fury of the storm. As Leo's headlights washed over him, two things struck him as deeply wrong. The man's clothes were simple, dark and impossibly dry, and his pale face held an expression of complete and total emptiness. Every instinct for self-preservation screamed at Leo to keep driving, to not invite this midnight anomaly into his sanctuary. Yet a strange, compelling sense of duty, or perhaps just morbid curiosity, took over. He slowed the car to a halt, the passenger door unlocking with a soft, fateful click. The man slid into the passenger seat without a word. He brought with him an intense, unnatural cold that instantly leached the warmth from the car's interior. It was a deep, crypt-like chill that felt ancient and wrong. Leo stared for a moment, his mind struggling to process the impossible dryness of the man's clothes and the profound cold that radiated from him. He put the car back in drive, his hand slick on the wheel. "Rough night to be out," Leo said, his voice sounding thin. The passenger simply nodded, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "The night is as it should be," he replied. His voice was a brittle, low monotone, entirely devoid of life or emotion. They drove in an unnerving silence for several miles. Leo's attempts at small talk were met with short, cryptic answers, or no answer at all. The dread in the car grew with every passing mile marker. Finally, the passenger turned his head with an eerie, frictionless slowness. His pale gray eyes seemed to look right through Leo. "You drive as if you're running from something, Leo," he stated, not asked. The use of his name struck Leo with the force of a physical blow. His heart hammered against his ribs. "How do you know my name?" he stammered. The passenger ignored the question. "You hope a new city will fix what's broken inside you," he continued in that same hollow tone. "You hope it will make you forget Bo, but some things can't be forgotten. Some things are waiting for you up ahead." A paralyzing fear, cold and sharp, gripped Leo. "What do you want?" he whispered. A faint, horrifying smile touched the passenger's lips. I want nothing. I am merely a storyteller, Pa. And tonight's story is about a tired young man on a long, dark road. Pa. It's about the flash of brown and white at the edge of the woods. It's about a violent, instinctive swerve of the steering wheel, the shriek of tires on wet asphalt, and the unforgiving embrace of an old oak tree. He described the scene with chilling, clinical detail, not as a witness, but as the author of a prophecy. He was describing a fate that felt both inevitable and immediate. In a surge of pure terror, Leo screamed, a raw denial of the man's words. "Get out, B." He glanced at the passenger seat, ready to physically throw this creature from his car. But there was no one there. The seat was empty. The door was still locked. The only trace of his presence was the lingering, soul-deep cold, and a faint, dark stain of moisture on the seat that seemed to evaporate, even as he watched it pee. He was alone again, but the solitude was now a terrifying, suffocating void. He drove on, his mind a whirlwind of fear and disbelief, desperately trying to convince himself that it was all a waking nightmare brought on by exhaustion. He didn't have to wonder for long. As he rounded a long, sweeping curve, his headlights illuminated a scene pulled directly from the passenger's prophecy. There, at the edge of the road, stood a large deer, its eyes glowing like embers in the beams of his car. And just behind it, looming like a sentinel of doom, was a massive, ancient oak tree, its thick trunk waiting. In that final, suspended moment, Leo understood. He understood the story he had been told. He understood that his journey was over. His hands froze on the wheel. He didn't swerve. He didn't brake. He simply closed his eyes and accepted the ending that had been written for him long before he'd ever gotten on this road. Some journeys are not measured in miles, but in moments. Some stories are not read from a book, but told by a pale stranger in the passenger seat of your car. The question we are left with tonight is whether we are the drivers of our own lives, poor, or merely passengers heading towards a destination that has already been decided for us. Thank you for joining us in the darkness. We will be waiting for you on the next trip into Nocturnia.